Willie D. Live.
And shockingly, there's some really bright kids there. And in fact, I'd even venture to say, like, me remembering when I was their age in school, I feel like Baltimore had a higher percentage of kids that were intellectually gifted than what I had in Los Angeles, which is amazing with all the goddamn lead in the paint and in all the things there with that old infrastructure. But, I don't know. I know that they performed well on their test scores. I know that I was able to get them that, but that's what I'm so serious about. Like, these single moms, man, and it's like you have to pick the right man. You have to be qualified to have kids. Those children were suffering. Like, I've traveled all over the world. I filled up 4 passport books. I've been to, slums in Brazil. I've been to backwaters in Ethiopia. I've never seen suffering like that, because when other people around the world are poor, they're not violent. When other people around the world are poor, they don't have enough money to use heroin and meth and crack. So America's fake poverty, you have enough money to destroy yourself. The people who, they're not as serious as I am about these things, because I've seen it. I've seen it from the cradle to the grave. Like, I know what's going on. And if you think a gradual solution will be a solution, you are wrong. Things are so bad. They say desperate times require desperate measures. The times are desperate. I always say we're in revolutionary times. And the worst thing is, so many people talk, they don't care. They do not care. I met many of the mayors of Baltimore personally, like the governors, mayors. I know a lot of people high up in politics. People wanted me to go into politics. And I realized that none of these people care. I know these people. The people who run for president and don't make it, I know them personally. They do not care at all. I remember when I was working for the mayor of Baltimore. I'm not going to say which one. I'm working for the mayor of Baltimore, and I was doing essentially data for the Baltimore City Schools, which is one of the larger school districts in the country. And, I had a finding that I brought to the attention of one of the higher ups, and they're kind of like, oh, that's really bad. Don't tell anybody about that. And I distinctly remember my entire time with the mayor's office, I only saw them get passionate one time about one issue, which was who's going to get the box seats for the Ravens. Who could get these box seats? Like, they were lobbying each other and negotiating, like, deeply passionate. And, people sometimes say, you sound harsh, or you're not compromising, you're inflexible. Yeah, well, that's about right, because the problems are very serious. I care enough. And some of the people who think they know the answers, they don't know the answers. Some of the people who would be the solution are actually the enemy.
And some of the people who actually know the answers are not going to do anything about it. They know the answers, and they're not going to put the effort in to come up with the solution. And to your point about how people in other parts of the world are poor, but they're not violent. They don't become criminals. Yeah. Man, I lived in Azerbaijan, and I saw that firsthand. Mm-hmm. A lot of times you have to travel. You got to get outside of the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Was you in Baku?
I was in Baku.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And for example, so Baku at the time was a city of 4,000 people. Okay. 4 million people.
Okay.
By comparison, Houston have about 4 million people, right? Mm-hmm. At that time. Around that time, Houston was averaging about 15 murders a week.
Okay, that's a lot.
By comparison, Baku was averaging about 1 murder a month. A month.
Right.
And when it did happen, it was usually something domestic, right?
Yeah.
Husband and wife got into it or something like that, But you would not see all this crime and stuff going on. Like women, I would see women walking the street sometimes at 2:00 a.m., 4:00. Maybe I'm coming from a club or some event,
Yeah.
And I would say, we're going, we might be like on the countryside or something. Man, you can see women just walking down the street at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, fully dressed in provocative clothes and everything. The clothes are contoured, and they nobody would try to harm them. They did not have rapes and all that shit going on. In the U.S., you know how that go.
Yeah, yeah.
And I would see men lining the streets, like we'd have like Mexicans primarily in Houston lining the streets, like at not lining the streets, but lined up at Home Depot or the gas station or whatever. You might see a cluster of 20 men or so.
Yeah.
But in Baku, that would be hundreds of men lining the streets on both sides for about a good maybe quarter of a mile. And then it stopped, and then it pick up again a mile later or 2 miles later. Over here, you see another 50 men over here, another 100, and they would all have suits on.
Okay.
Now the suits were not in the best condition, but the fact that they had enough pride to put a suit on, and they were ready for any job that was offered to them. They were dressed. They were ready to go. They was dressed whether they got a job digging a ditch, or a job delivering files at a business, whatever. They were just ready, man.
Yes, sir.
And they were very respectful. A guy, one time I was on my way home, and I look and I see this guy getting beat up, right? And I tell my driver, hey man, go back and find out what happened, because they were whooping his ass. It was like the whole of the neighborhood was whooping on him. It was like little kids was kicking them.
Yeah, it was a team effort.
Grown men were boop, boop, boop. And I saw an old lady, women was hitting them, and I saw an old lady had a broomstick hitting them in slow motion.
Yeah.
Bam. Bam. So I'm like, damn, what the hell going on? Because I had never seen anything like that in that country before, right? He leaves, he drops me off, he comes back a good hour later and he say, yeah, that guy, he beat up his girlfriend, and so the neighborhood jumped him.
The neighborhood jumped.
The neighborhood jumped.
The tribe.
They do not play that shit.
Yeah.
Like you ain't finna, like in Houston, around the United States, is mind your business.
Right.
Dude, Jack is warming up he'll beat his woman up in the grocery store.
Yeah.
Smack his woman on the bus or whatever, on the train.
Yeah.
They don't, but it's the culture, and it's indicative of, the government, because everything starts at the top and it trickles down to the bottom, and we know that a lot of this, you'll have people say, well, it starts at home, and you're absolutely right. It does start at home, right? But the government does not make things any better for those who don't have direction.
Okay.
You dig what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because some of us, we do have stewardship over our emotions. We understand, how to behave in a civilized manner. But for those who don't, the answer, it seems like to me, is not a plausible way to deal with those of us who ain't necessarily civilized, or those of us who ain't necessarily in control of our emotions. It's everything is lock them up, throw away the key.
Right.
And we're not.
Right, yeah.
And to your point about what was going on in Baltimore when you was a teacher, it's those social resources. We need those.
Yeah.
We need those social resources, because the way things are going right now, man, I mean, we talk about such and such days are numbered, that person, our days as a society is numbered. You being a teacher and going through like one of the toughest like school districts, in the whole country. I'm pretty sure, you know, I'm pretty sure you saved somebody, because it was a teacher that saved me.
Hmm.
You know, Miss Emmett Oliver.
Okay, shout out to Miss Emmett.
Emma Oliver. I said Emmett.
Okay, Emma Oliver. Okay.
Emma Oliver
Yes, sir.
was my homeroom teacher, my science teacher, and that woman, like she looked after me. I didn't go to her house. She didn't buy me school clothes. She didn't buy me school supplies.
On the blind side, huh?
But what she did, she invested in my self-esteem. She invested in my self-esteem. And that's what a lot of these kids need, and that's what a lot of them are missing, because you got kids every day, man, they being told that they ain't nothing. Their own mama saying, I wish I never had you.
Yeah.
So a lot of them don't know who their dad is and things like that. So
a ton. Even the ones that think they know sometimes don't know.
Yeah. What was the worst case of a child going through something you saw while you was teaching in Baltimore?
Oh, man. You already got me looking bad out here, brother. Like, this man's crying on camera, this guy. The worst thing I've seen kids go through there? Oh, who knows? There was a lot of stories. I think that I could have wrote a book just about that, which is why I stopped. You know, after I completed the 2 years, that's why I didn't do it again. I think the worst stories were the girls, to be honest with you. Because pretty much the girls had to endure whatever the boys had to endure, including, you know, violence and all this other stuff, plus the additional sexual abuse that is more common to happen to female children. And so I think that was probably the toughest one. And a lot of this stuff there was one situation that, and I write about this in my book, The Black Box, and this was trippy to hear this conversation. What they do is, in these resource-deprived schools, they'll hire newbies like me from Teach for America. Now imagine you hire some snot-nosed kid who just got out of Harvard or Yale to deal with black kids in Baltimore. Mm-hmm. That's crazy. And then you hire a whole bunch of Filipinos who are fresh from the Philippines. Shout out to the Filipino people, lovely people, very friendly, very polite, but probably are not going to be well equipped to deal with urban kids in Baltimore. And then you got a couple old black women teaching who have been there since the school opened, and they're the glue that holds that place together. They understand all the dynamics. I remember one time I heard a story, and I almost never went to the teacher's lounge. I went one time and never again. I walked in there, and they're talking about this child. Oh, I remember the worst story. I'm going to tell you right after this. But they're talking about this little girl, and everyone was pretty much saying, like, yeah, we need to report this to whatever the ADFC or CD, Child Protective Services, whoever. We need to report this. And then the old black woman came over and said, for what? And everyone turned to her with horror, including myself. Like, yo, what you want? She was like, for what? So they could put her in a group home and everybody could REPE her? So they could put her in a group home, then she ain't even got one person to look out for her? So they could put her in a group home and people just abuse her left and right? That's what you want to do? Leave that girl as she is. You know, that thing may have happened to her, but she's better off where she is. And that, I was like, ooh.